Welcome to this PowerPoint presentation on basic sentence structures. This is a PowerPoint presentation and I am Dr. James David Patterson, a professor of English. I have made the comment in earlier presentations that it's a brief presentation, and I want to warn the listener right up front that this is not a brief presentation. I'll be talking about basic sentence structures, and I'll be providing you with a number of examples as we go through. So, let's begin with a definition of what is a sentence. I have taken this definition from the Longman Dictionary because it works best for what we're doing in an English composition class. The Longman Dictionary defines a sentence as, quote, a group of written or spoken words that has a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought or asks a question. Sentences written in English begin with a capital letter and end with a period, a question mark, or an exclamation point, end quote. Now, I want to take that definition and I want to break it down into 5 pieces. Number 1, a sentence is a group of words. In fiction writing, it is possible for a sentence to be made up of a single word. But we are in English composition classes, which are focusing on academic writing, and so a sentence will always be a group of words. Number 2, that group of words needs to contain a subject and a predicate verb. I'll talk about a predicate verb in just a moment, but a sentence is a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate verb, and number 3, forms a complete thought. A sentence is a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate verb and forms a complete thought. Later in this presentation, we will talk about independent clauses versus dependent clauses, and this number 3 element will come into phase there as we look at an independent clause forms a complete thought, but a dependent clause does not. Number 4, in English, a sentence begins with a capital letter. A capital letter, the initial letter of the first word of each sentence needs to be a capital letter, and it needs to end with an appropriate punctuation mark. As the Longman Dictionary pointed out, you can end with a period, a question mark, or an exclamation mark. What we will talk about in this class is that for academic writing, we want to avoid exclamation marks. And so for our purposes here, an ends with an appropriate punctuation mark means a period or a question mark. So 5 pieces, 5 things that have to be there for a sentence to be a sentence. Now, I've just talked about several terms, so let me take a moment and talk about some of the academic vocabulary that I'm using in this presentation and in class. A subject is usually a noun, and a subject identifies what the sentence or who the sentence is about. A predicate is a verb or a verb phrase, and the predicate verb tells us what the subject of the sentence is or does. I will show you an example later of a sentence that has multiple verbs, but not all of the verbs in the sentence refer to the subject. And so a predicate is a verb or a verb phrase that tells us what the subject of the sentence is or does. Now, I haven't mentioned this word clause except to say independent and dependent clause, but a clause is a group of words with a subject and a predicate. That's key to our purposes here. A clause is a group of words with subject and predicate. In an independent clause, we have a subject and a predicate, and it forms a complete thought. In a dependent clause, we have a subject and a predicate. That makes it a clause, but it is dependent clause. It does not form a complete thought. A phrase, then, is 2 or more words that form a unit within a single function within a phrase, within a sentence. They serve a purpose, they modify or explain, but they are not clauses. They do not contain a subject and a predicate. So, a subject, predicate, clause, and phrase are some of the academic vocabulary we'll be using in this class. So let us begin with simple sentences. A simple sentence consists of one subject and one predicate. Are you with me? One subject and one predicate. That's what makes a simple sentence simple. The example, I like simple sentences. What is the subject of the sentence? I is the subject. And what is the predicate verb? Like. I like. And simple sentences simply tells the reader what it is I like. A simple sentence consists of one subject and one predicate verb. Now in this example, it's a very short sentence, but do not get confused. Not all simple sentences are short. There can be a sentence that goes on quite a ways with lots of modification and clarification and explanation, but the sentence still has only one subject and one predicate verb. That sentence is then simple. A simple sentence can have a double subject. In this example, my wife and I both have doctorates. What is the subject? Is my wife the subject? No. Am I the subject? No. My wife and I both are the subject of the sentence. What is the predicate verb? Have. My wife and I both possess. And then the word doctorates tells the reader what it is that my wife and I both possess. A simple sentence can also or else have a double predicate. I go home every evening and have dinner with my wife. What's the subject? I. I is the subject of the sentence. The predicate tells the reader what I do. But there's a double predicate. I go home and I have dinner. Two predicates, two predicate verbs. Go home explains what I do. Have dinner explains what I do. Notice that with my wife is a prepositional phrase. It's a group of words that serves a purpose within the sentence. And this sentence is still a simple sentence because there's one subject and a double predicate. But there's only one predicate. All right, here are some simple sentences. Let's take a look. My wife drove to Phoenix. What is the subject? Wife. And what is the predicate verb? Drove. Sentence number 2, I went with her. The subject is I, and the predicate verb is went. I like simple sentences. Subject, I, predicate verb, like. Simple sentences can be fun. What's the subject? Sentences. In particular, simple sentences, but sentences is the noun. What is the predicate verb? Is it can? It's be. Can is what we consider a helping verb. Simple sentences can be, they can be fun. Sometimes simple sentences are not fun, but simple sentences can be fun. The subject is what the sentence is about. Okay? The subject is what the sentence is about. I want you to see that the subject of this sentence is subject. It's an abstract noun, but it's the subject, and the sentence is about the subject. The predicate verb is, and we're talking about the is following the word subject, because the subject is what the sentence is about. Are you with me? Is about is a predicate verb. No, it's a verb, but it's not a predicate verb. The subject is not about. The subject is what the sentence is about. So here we've got two verbs. They're both is. The first is the predicate verb because it tells us what the subject of the sentence is doing. All right? I know this is getting a little frustrating. Stay with me. The predicate tells us what the subject did, comma, is doing, comma, or will do. Parentheses, verb or verb phrase, close parentheses, period. What is the subject of this sentence? Predicate is the subject of this sentence. This is a sentence about the predicate. What is the predicate verb? tells. Tells, tells is the predicate verb because it tells us what the predicate is telling us, and that a predicate is a subject, did, is doing, or will do. All right? All predicates are verbs, period. What is the subject of the sentence? All predicates. What is the predicate verb? Are verbs. Not all verbs are predicates, period. What's the subject of the sentence? Verbs. And what is the predicate verb? Are. Not all explains to us what verbs we're talking about, and predicates tells us what not all verbs are. Okay, let's review again while this is still fresh in your mind. A sentence is a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate verb and forms a complete thought. In English, it begins with a capital letter and ends with an appropriate punctuation mark. In academic writing, that's going to be a period or a question mark. Now, we've talked about simple sentences. Now let's expand to talk about compound sentences as well. As we said earlier, a simple sentence consists of one subject and one predicate. The example that we gave was, I like simple sentences. A compound sentence consists of two or more simple sentences joined to form a single sentence, which is a compound sentence. Example, a compound sentence has two or more simple sentences joined together, comma, and there are several ways to join the simple sentences together, period. That is a compound sentence, and it explains what a compound sentence is. A compound sentence consists of two or more simple sentences. We'll call those independent clauses later. The two or more simple sentences joined to form a single sentence, which is, by definition, a compound sentence. When we are punctuating compound sentences, we have two choices. The Modern Language Association says, quote, use a comma before a coordinating conjunction joining independent clauses in a sentence, period. We use a comma before a coordinating conjunction joining independent clauses in a compound sentence. We will call this comma the comma. Rosemary Dean and Marie Ponsat have written a book called The Common Sense, and they talk about this comma rule being the comma. This is the most important comma rule. We use a comma before a coordinating conjunction joining independent clauses in a sentence. In the Modern Language Association Handbook, this is comma rule number 1. And I'm sad to tell you that in the APA Handbook, this is comma rule number 3. But whether you will be writing in MLA or APA or any of the other styles when you get to the universities, this comma is the comma rule that you need to learn. However, in some cases, we can use a semicolon when we're forming a compound sentence. The Modern Language Association says use a semicolon between independent clauses not linked by a conjunction. Not linked by a conjunction. So if we are using a coordinating conjunction, we need a comma. If we are not going to use a coordinating conjunction, we use a semicolon. And just a reminder, a simple sentence is an independent clause. Now, I've talked about coordinating conjunctions. Some of you know this list, some of you do not, so let's refresh. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. 7 coordinating conjunctions. And I want to tell you very clearly, these are the 7 coordinating conjunctions. There are no more. This list of 7 coordinating conjunctions. In compound sentences, let's see how those work. Example, my wife and I drove to Phoenix, comma, and our dogs stayed in a kennel, period. Let's look at a different coordinating conjunction. My wife and I drove to Phoenix, comma, but our dogs stayed in a kennel, period. Now, the only difference in these two sentences is the coordinating conjunction. But I want you to think and examine and analyze and understand that the different coordinating conjunctions imply a different meaning in the sentence. In the first case, my wife and I drove to Phoenix, comma, and our dogs stayed in a kennel, period. That suggests that that's what the dogs do when my wife and I go to Phoenix. In the second sentence, my wife and I drove to Phoenix, comma, but our dogs stayed in a kennel, period, suggests that oftentimes when my wife and I go to Phoenix, the dogs go also. In this case, my wife and I drove to Phoenix, but our dogs stayed in a kennel. If neither of the coordinating conjunctions work for us, we don't need a coordinating conjunction, but that comma needs to become a semicolon. My wife and I drove to Phoenix, semicolon, our dogs came along for the drive. Compound sentences are used to demonstrate the interrelatedness of two independent thoughts. We put independent thoughts together to form a compound sentence because there is an overarching concept that we're trying to communicate by the addition of two or more simple sentences into a compound sentence. Okay, let's check something here. A pizza pocket sounds good, comma, but I had a big breakfast, period. Is this a compound sentence? Number one, do I have a coordinating conjunction with a comma? Yes, comma, but. Before the comma, but, do I have an independent clause, a simple sentence? A pizza pocket sounds good. The subject is pizza pocket, and the predicate verb is sounds. A pizza pocket sounds good, period. Do I have an independent clause after the comma, but? I had a big breakfast. Subject, I. Predicate verb, had. I had a big breakfast. So this example is a correct compound sentence. Independent clause linked with another independent clause with a comma before a coordinating conjunction. Try this one. I have so much stuff to do today, comma, but not enough time, period. Is this a compound sentence? The answer is no. I have a comma, but, and in front of the comma, but, I have so much stuff to do today, period. Subject, I. Predicate, have, and they so much stuff to do today are two prepositional phrases. I have so much stuff to do today, period. That's a sentence. Do I have an independent clause after the comma, but? What I have is not enough time. Is there a subject? You could argue that time is the subject, but there is no predicate verb. In other words, after the comma and the coordinating conjunction, I do not have another verb. Therefore, this sentence is incorrect because the comma is not necessary. I have so much stuff to do today, but not enough time. There's no comma. That is a simple sentence. Try this one. I like going to school, comma, and attending all my classes. Now again, I've got a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Before the comma and the coordinating conjunction, I have a complete and simple sentence. I like going to school. After the comma and the coordinating conjunction, I have attending all of my classes. I have a verb. Do I have a subject? No, because the subject is I, all the way over there on the left. To make this a compound sentence, the subject would have to be repeated. I like going to school and I like attending all of my classes. Then I would have a compound sentence. As this stands, this is incorrect. There's no comma. I like going to school and attending all of my classes. I have a subject and I have a double predicate. Example, the students were excited about going to school, comma, and learning new things. You're starting to pick up on it. And learning new things is not a complete sentence. Learning new things is not a clause. an independent clause. The students were excited about going to school, comma, and we need to clean our room. Oh, this is a tricky one for you because I have a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Before the comma and the coordinating conjunction, I have a simple sentence. The students were excited about going to school. After the comma and coordinating conjunction, I have another independent clause. We need to clean our room. The problem with this compound sentence, while it is grammatically correct, it does not make sense because there is no clear link or understanding of the relationship between these two independent clauses. Why are these two independent clauses being put together as a compound sentence? It does not work because they're not related. Try again. I have always wanted to visit Canada, comma, my wife wants to visit Quebec, period. Is this a compound sentence? The answer is it's incorrect. I have always wanted to visit Canada is an independent clause. My wife wants to visit Quebec is an independent clause. But I do not have a comma with a coordinating conjunction. Are you with me? I have a comma, but no coordinating conjunction. This is an incorrect grammatical error. This is what we call a comma splice error because we're putting two independent clauses together to form a compound sentence, but we're using only a comma. That is incorrect. It is a common mistake, but it is still an error which will get you into trouble in academic writing. How do we fix this? There are two ways. We could add a coordinating conjunction. I have always wanted to visit Canada, comma, and my wife wants to visit Quebec, period. That would work. Or we can turn the comma into a semicolon. I have always wanted to visit Canada, semicolon, my wife wants to visit Quebec, period. And for those of you that have failed your geography classes, Quebec is in Canada. So it does make sense. I've always wanted to visit Canada in general. My wife specifically wants to visit Quebec in Canada. I have never read Moby Dick, semicolon, I expect I never will. Is this a correct compound sentence? The answer is yes. I have a semicolon, so I do not have a coordinating conjunction. Before the semicolon, I have an independent clause. I have never read Moby Dick. After the semicolon, I have another independent clause. I expect I never will. This is a correct compound sentence being joined with a semicolon. Try this one. I put off taking an English course, comma, I really need to pass this class. This one's just wrong on several different levels. We have a comma, but no coordinating conjunction. So before the comma, we do have an independent clause. I put off taking an English course. Many students do, to their own peril. That's a complete thought. I really need to pass this class. If we assume that this class is an English class, then there is a relatedness between the two sentences, the two simple sentences, but they are only being joined with a comma. This is a comma splice error. The comma needs a coordinating conjunction, or the comma needs to become a semicolon. Try this one. I really need to pass this class, comma, because I'm ready to graduate and transfer to the university, period. I have a comma, but I do not have one of the 7 coordinating conjunctions. Before the comma, I have an independent clause. I really need to pass this class. After that comma, I have, because I'm ready to graduate and transfer to the university. Well, I'm ready is a clause. There's subject, am ready is the predicate verb. I am ready is your clause. But the word because, as we'll see later, is a subordinating conjunction, not a coordinating conjunction. So this sentence is incorrect. This is a broken sentence. The best way to fix this sentence would be to simply remove that comma. I really need to pass this class because I'm ready to graduate and transfer to the university, period. Try one more. Fanboys is an acronym I need to memorize. If you have not already memorized it, memorize it quickly. Fanboys is an acronym we need to memorize. The Fanboys is an acronym using the first letters of each of the 7 coordinating conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Fanboys is an acronym I need to memorize. Fanboys is important because then you know whether you need a comma or not. These examples are helpful, comma, and I am ready for the test, period. Yes, there will be a test. These examples are helpful, independent clause. I am ready for the test, independent clause, joined with a comma before a coordinating conjunction. This sentence is a correct compound sentence. More. Antelope Community College is close to my home, comma, and they offer the major I want to pursue, period. Is this a correct compound sentence? Yes. I was accepted into the University of California at Riverside, comma, but Antelope Community College offers the same general education classes for a lot less money, period. Is this a correct compound sentence? Yes. Mr. Jenkins is the best teacher I have ever had, comma, so I recommend you take his class next semester, period. Is this a correct compound sentence? Yes. The word so is one of the 7 coordinating conjunctions. Compound sentences have a basic structure, semicolon. It is easy to recognize them in a paragraph, period. Is this a correct compound sentence? Yes. I have an independent clause, I have a second independent clause, and they are joined with a semicolon. Review again. What is a sentence? A sentence is a group of words, has a subject and a predicate, expresses a complete thought or asks a question, begins with a capital letter, and ends with a period or a question mark. Let us review the academic vocabulary for English one more time. A subject is what the sentence is about, usually a noun. Predicate is a verb or verb phrase, what the subject of the sentence is or does. A clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate. And a phrase is 2 or more words that form a unit. They serve a purpose, a function within a sentence, but they do not include a subject or a predicate. Now, I've said a simple sentence has 1 subject and 1 predicate. A compound sentence is 2 or more independent clauses, that is, simple sentences joined together with a comma and a coordinating conjunction, or with a semicolon and no coordinating conjunction. Now we introduce this new baby. A complex sentence has 1 independent clause and at least 1 dependent clause. Let me say that again. A complex sentence has 1 independent clause. If the complex sentence has 2 or more independent clauses, then it's not a complex sentence, it's a compound complex sentence. So a complex sentence has 1 independent clause, and it has at least 1 dependent clause. The idea being that you can have additional dependent clauses. What makes it complex is that there's 1 independent clause and at least 1 dependent clause. A clause, remember, is a group of words with subject and predicate. An independent clause is a group of words with a subject and a predicate which is able to stand alone as a complete thought. That's the key here, because a dependent clause is also a group of words with a subject and a predicate. But a dependent clause is not able to stand alone as a complete thought. In most cases, a dependent clause is introduced with a subordinating conjunction. And this is a list of subordinating conjunctions. I'm not going to read through the list. I encourage you to hit the pause button and take a moment to write down this list. I want to warn you, however, that this is not a complete list. According to some experts, there are 30 or more subordinating conjunctions. Sometimes it depends on how a word or group of words is being used within the sentence. So there is no definitive list of subordinating conjunctions. But take a moment, write these down, and what I encourage you to do initially is simply go through the list and pick the 2 or 3 of these words that you use most often. If you can focus on these few words that you use most often, it'll help you grasp the concept of subordinating conjunctions and how they function within complex sentences. Now, independent becomes dependent. A dependent clause does not become independent. An independent clause becomes dependent. Here we go. We will impose stricter gun control laws. It's an independent clause. We is the subject. Will impose is the predicate verb. We will impose stricter gun control laws. A dependent clause is typically begun or initiated with a subordinating conjunction. Let us use the word because. Because is a subordinating conjunction. So we put it in front of our sentence. Because we will impose stricter gun control laws, what? What will happen because we impose stricter gun control laws? So we had an independent clause, we added a subordinating conjunction, and the independent clause became dependent. It is dependent on a complete thought. That's why a dependent clause needs to be attached to an independent clause. Just because we will impose stricter gun control laws, comma, criminals will still use guns to hurt people. Period. In most instances of a complex sentence, you can flip the independent and dependent clauses. Before we start writing, comma, we should understand the purpose and tone we are aiming for. Period. We start writing has a subject and a predicate verb. We start writing is an independent clause. With the word before, the independent clause becomes dependent. Before we start writing, what? What happens before we start writing? Well, before we start writing, comma, we should understand the purpose and tone we are aiming for. That's a complete, complex sentence. We can flip it. We should understand the purpose and tone we are aiming for before we start writing. We've flipped the independent and the dependent clauses. We still have a complex sentence. The difference is the comma. If the complex sentence begins with a dependent clause, if the complex sentence begins with a dependent clause, we need a comma. If the complex sentence begins with an independent clause, no comma. Flipping sentences. Just because we impose stricter gun control laws, comma, it does not follow that criminals will suddenly turn in their weapons. Now, this can get really scary, not the gun control laws or the criminals, but that comma in the middle. Because someone may think, wait, I have a comma splice error. The answer is no, this is not a comma splice error. The comma is coming after the dependent clause. We use the comma and a coordinating conjunction when we are linking or joining two independent clauses. If one of the clauses is dependent, we do not use a coordinating conjunction. Just because we impose stricter gun control laws, comma, it does not follow that criminals will suddenly turn in their weapons. We can flip this. It does not follow that criminals will suddenly turn in their weapons just because we impose stricter gun control laws. Period. The difference? When we begin the sentence with a dependent clause, we need the comma. If we begin the complex sentence with the independent clause, there is no comma. Are you ready? A sentence is a group of words that contains a subject and predicate verb and forms a complete thought. In English, it begins with a capital letter and ends with an appropriate punctuation mark. This is a correct compound sentence. Very good. Thanks for hanging out there with me. I apologize for the length of this presentation.